Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first of our series of professional development forums hosted by the Joint Education Task Forces of the Jamaica Diaspora Action Task Force Network. We are pleased and excited to have you with us, and we invite you to sit and enjoy and learn and be inspired with our cradle to college and career readiness focus. All of the task forces under the education banner, early childhood, primary and secondary, tertiary and special education, we have collaborated together in order to give you a pre-summit experience where we're looking at facing the challenges in education today to close achievement gaps by reimagining teaching and learning. And the afternoon will end with a special treat in which we have an author's circle featuring 3 of our very own Jamaican-born authors. It will be moderated by our Dr. Sharika, and we will have Dr. Sharika Dakris and Dr. Noel Gordon and his sister, Mrs. Hyacinth Gordon Clark. So we have a full and wonderful evening planned for you. I don't know if our Dr. Margaret Chin, our special guest, is on. She's going to be our plenary at the summit, but when she gets on, we will have remarks from her. I am going to get ready to turn it over to Ms. Carleen Largy, who will open up our first session on closing the achievement gaps by presenting our speakers for that first session. One of the main things that we're going to ask you all to do is to really practice the reflective process. We're going to ask you to, as you hear the strategies, to think on them, plan how you can incorporate it and internalize it into your own pedagogical practice. You're going to come up with an action plan. If it's even one strategy, just something that you can take away from each presentation, and how you're going to check and continue that ongoing process of self-improvement. We also have our new to our team, or Miss Victoria Spence, who is our newest vice chair, and we will be hearing more from her at our summit. And on our panelists, if you look across, you will see representation from all across our education task forces, and each team will introduce themselves as the evening progresses. So please sit back and get ready to reflect and learn as we partner together to see Vision 2030 become a reality for Jamaica. Thank you. Ms. Largy, over to you.
Unmute, Ms. Largy.
You're still muted. Ms. Largy, you're still muted.
I did it twice.
There you go. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Goodenbaker. Greetings, everyone. Our first session will include Ms. Andrea M. Thomas, who attended Iona College, where she earned a bachelor's degree in communications, a master's degree in elementary education, and a second master's degree in administration and supervision with a minor in special education. She's currently enrolled in Concordia University, where she will earn a doctoral degree in leadership, innovation, and continuous improvement. Ms. Thomas is in the Mount Vernon, New York public school system, where she has served in several capacities: teacher, assistant principal, supervisor of guidance and pupil personnel, and interim humanities chairperson. A warm welcome to Ms. Andrea Thomas, and her topic will be engaging diverse learners during the pandemic. She'll be followed by Dr. Colin M. Wolf, who has served in several capacities within the New York City Department of Education. His positions have included assistant principal, staff developer, school-based management, and a mentor. He is presently the principal of a large elementary school in the Bronx, New York. Prior to his assuming this position, he was in the New York City Department of Education, and he is also the founder and chief executive officer of Pro Knowledge Consultancy, an enterprise that provides training and support to individuals and organizations in several educational and administrative areas. Dr. Wolf is a renowned public speaker and an outstanding workshop presenter. His topic will be Identify and Address Learning Modalities. Sharing her perspectives on special education is our third presenter, the chair of the Jamaica Diaspora Education Task Force, Special Education. Dr. Claudette Peterkin has been working in the educational field for 25 years, with 18 of those years in special education. She earned her doctoral degree in special education leadership, is a certified teacher, and holds 2 master's degrees in educational psychology and special education from K through 12. She is currently working on a second dissertation in higher education on students and disabilities and their post-secondary education. Her education philosophy is, if you believe, you can, you can.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea Thomas. I am currently the assistant principal at the Denzel Washington School of the Arts in the splendid town of Mount Vernon, New York. And I had the opportunity and the privilege to teach wonderful students who are artists, singers, dancers, thespians, technical theater expertise, you name it. If they're artistic, we'll take them. And I have the distinct pleasure this afternoon of presenting to you how to engage diverse learners during the pandemic to close the achievement gap. And I'm going to share my screen at this time. All right, so why student engagement? Students need to be engaged in order to learn. Engagement promotes motivation, allows students to practice high-level critical skills, and it promotes meaningful learning experiences for the students. Now, students who are actively engaged, you can tell because usually their eyes light up, and what happens is that that proverbial light bulb goes off. Most information, if not actively used, will be forgotten almost immediately right after a lesson. So that's very important why engagement is necessary. All right, so what I'd like to do right now is I'm gonna read you a quote, and in the chat, if you can tell me your comments real quick, you have about a minute. To capture a kid's mind, you must first capture their hearts. What do you think about this quote? What do you think this quote means? And if you can put your responses in the chat, that will be most helpful. And then I'm going to have Dr. Britton share what you have. So you have about a minute. And Dr. Britton, whenever you're ready, just go ahead and share the comments that are coming through.
Sure, I will.
Right, to capture a kid's or a child's mind, you must first capture their hearts. What do you think?
So we're getting a number of responses, which include, it means to inspire students, learning through love, motivate, the emotions have to be awakened to inspire learning.
I'm going to zero in on that second comment. You said learning through love.
Right.
I want to emphasize that in order to really make an effect on your children that you teach, you must build relationship. You must know your children. You must reach out to know their backgrounds, their every nuance, because that is the only way we're going to reach this generation. Thank you very much, Dr. Britton.
Mhm.
So let's look at the cone of learning. Why do we need engagement? If we look at the percentages on the right, 10% of what we read, we remember after 2 weeks, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we see and hear, and those are all passive skills. But then the active skills, look at that, look at the difference. 70% of what we say and 90% of what we do and say. So for example, and there's examples in the cone, doing a dramatic presentation while doing a real life presentation. For example, in my school, we have what we call arts integration. So if I ask a student to do a presentation on let's say the reading of the Martin Luther King speech, I Have a Dream, and they do a reenactment, they're more likely to remember it because they're not only saying it, they're also doing it. And so Confucius says it so well: I see and I forget, I hear and I remember, I do and I understand. In primary classrooms, teachers can achieve engagement by offering pupils a choice of assignments or activities. By providing options, learning becomes child-centered rather than teacher-centered, boosting student engagement levels. I had a mentor told me when I first started teaching, sage, get off the stage. In other words, the teacher is not to be the stage, because really we are there for the children. And so if we make it child-centered, that'll definitely boost the engagement levels. By taking the time to find out more about what each child likes outside of the classroom, teachers can bring this information into the lesson planning and reference it as an example for assignments. Make the lesson fun. We know that as adults, we tend to want to have fun. So we don't want to bring the boredom back into the classroom. So we need to make the lessons fun. Another way that the teacher can also make sure that engagement is being done is by doing instant assessments. I don't have time to delve into the assessment piece of it, but collaborate, make sure that the students are learning in real time by giving them a few moments to digest and to regurgitate the information that you have presented to them. Also, when you are doing that, you can now do a quick assessment of where the student is so that the teacher can tailor the re-lessons to match the student's need. Collaboration is also another important part of engagement. When students work together, the engagement is intensified. As such, it helps to make sure that every student is participating in the lesson. Now, if students are left to their own devices, they are more likely to form cliques, and it would be very difficult to break those cliques apart, especially once they're bonded. So it's very, very important to let the collaboration be as effective as possible. So when you're asking questions, you can ask a low-level questions, which is a recap question, or you can ask what we call an analyzation question, which is a question that requires some form of critical thinking. Now, the example of a recap questions would be, what are the 5 levels of student engagement in your own words? That's low level. But a higher order question, according to Bloom's taxonomy, would be, why are the 5 levels of student engagement important to the classroom teacher? So I took the same question and all I did was reword it to make it a higher level question. And so you want to focus more on higher level questioning to raise that engagement score. So what does it look like? I'm going to give you a few strategies. I'm not going to give you all of them because there are multiple strategies out there. But for example, if you're in the lower level classroom, like a primary, 1st, 2nd, or 3rd grade, you can hand clap as you talk. Hand clapping believe it or not. It's rhythm, and rhythm somehow connects to the brain, and the children will definitely connect to that. There's also something that I like to use called the 10-2 method, or the chunk and chew. So for every 10 minutes of instruction, allow the students 2 minutes to process and respond to the instruction. For example, if I have 10 minutes of instruction, for 2 minutes, I can have the children do what I call a quick write. In your journals, please give me a brief summary of what you just learned. I put the timer on, and they are to write for the whole 2 minutes, and then you can share at the end of the lesson. Another strategy of engagements, when you ask the question, allow students 5 to 7 seconds of think time about a story or a passage. All right, at the end of the time, draw a random name to answer the question. Another strategy could be at the end of the lesson, use a 3-2-1 method of summarization. So 3 things they have learned, 2 things they found interesting, 1 question they might have about what they were taught. Allow the students time to find a partner and share with a peer. Create challenging activities by making the activities with increased rigor. Make it a game. As I said before, children love games, and the more complex the games are, the higher the engagement, and they are learning at the same time. So for teachers, and experienced teachers know this, in order for the classroom not to be chaotic, what you need to do is make sure you have a management policy set in place. Especially now during the pandemic, when we are going from online to in-person, back to online to in-person, you want to teach and reteach social skills and expectation before working in the groups. I will never forget this. Again, one of my mentors taught me this the first time I started teaching. Rules and procedures rules the day. If you don't have any rules or procedures in your classroom, you are doomed for chaos. So, you know, in the lower grades, we tend to have a lot of rules, but also in the upper grades, believe it or not, middle school and high school, they do actually need that reminder. And you also need to choose a firm, quiet signal to get the attention of the students and use it. Don't need to be loud, don't need to be screaming, but signals work every single time, especially if you have control of that classroom. All right. Provide time for students to work out answers to questions before calling on the students. Give students think time. Ask students to explain what they have heard or show the rest of the class what they've heard. And again, group work is always a great way to show participation. Make the content relevant. A lot of students often ask, when am I going to use this? So you want to make the content relevant to the student. So this is another advice another mentor showed me. Read the room. Pay attention to your students while you are teaching. If you find that your students are zoning out, you need to switch immediately. And again, I don't have time to go into the specifics of that, but you need to, as a teacher, learn to read the room. Scaffold tasks with checkpoints. You know, you can't give them the whole orange at the same time. You need to pull the orange apart and give it to them peg by peg. Emphasize inquiry and discovery. And the last one is a 30, 60, 90 closure. Take 30 seconds to write down one thing you have learned. 60 seconds, find a partner and talk and share the item on your list. And then in 90 seconds, find another partner and share it on your list, and then share out for the whole entire class. And on this part of PowerPoint, I've given you a list of resources that you can find for strategies that you can get. There's a bunch of strategies out there for engagement, but these are some of the ones that I've used, and it has really helped me in my pedagogical lifetime. And so that comes to the end of my presentation. And if you have any questions, you may leave it in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer whenever our moderator takes over. So again, I thank you for your attention, and I hope that I've said something that will allow you to go back to your classrooms and share with your students or practice with your students so that you can raise the level of engagements for their learning. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Good afternoon. I trust I find you well. My name is Colin Wolfe, and I have been asked to have a talk with you today within the scope of 10 to 15 minutes, I was told, on the topic identifying and addressing learning modalities in response to achievement gaps. Now, as you might have discerned already, there are two separate concepts that are embedded in this topic. One has to do with learning modalities, and the other has to do with achievement gaps. Even though they are separate and distinct, they're correlated. And I think it was great wisdom for the topic to be designed this way. Perhaps it's going to be paradoxical to you that even though I'll be speaking about learning modalities, that I'll be using the exclusive method of the auditory modality today. I'm not going to be using a competing modality by sharing my screen with you. I'll be having a conversation with you, and I found it less distracting to do it that way. I'd like to begin, with your permission, by defining the term learning modalities. According to research, learning modality speaks to sensory channels or pathways through which individuals give, receive, and store information. Let me repeat that again. It's sensory pathways or channels through which all of us as individuals receive, give, or store information. And it's very important that we keep that in mind. The research is also saying that perception, memory, and sensation comprise the concept of modality. Now, there are different types of modalities. I'd like to begin by naming the first, and that is the auditory modality. There's also the visual modality. There is the tactile modality. There is the kinesthetic modality. And of recent, some researchers have been focusing on smelling and tasting as additional modalities which are not widely reported on in the literature in bygone days. One of the things I need to emphasize right now is that even though there are different modalities, that each of us has an innate dominant modality. So some of us, like myself, are auditory, have an dominant auditory modality. What does that mean? One of the things that means is that I don't get bored at all listening to someone talking to me. I don't get bored when I go to church and listen to a lengthy sermon. I grew up in a very small village in a rustic community in Jamaica where television in my childhood was not a very common feature. And so most of the houses in my village had radios. And I recall when it was time for them to broadcast cricket matches, we had developed this uncanny ability to listen to the commentators and actually visualize the game. And so that's one of the examples that I'd like to share with you about someone who has a dominant auditory modality, that we are very capable of listening to and absorbing and retaining information simply using that modality. I must hasten to say, though, that based on what the research is telling us, even though each of us has a dominant learning modality, we all have what we call secondary and tertiary modalities that we employ during the process of learning also. So whereas, for example, using myself again as an example, whereas my dominant learning modality is auditory, I also learn quite well by visualizing what contingencies related to the topic. So I will not be turned off, neither will I be disengaged if I'm asked to watch a film or video and extrapolate some learning information from that. I can do that, and so can all persons who have other dominant modalities. We have secondary modalities and we have tertiary modalities as well. Now, my learned friend who spoke ahead of me made mention of certain ranges that of knowledge acquisition that occurs with learners. For the visual learners, the research is saying that the rate of retention is about 25 to 30%. For the auditory learners, it is also saying that the rate of retention can be about 25 to 30%. For the tactile learners and the kinesthetic learners, it's about 15%. And for learners with mixed modalities, it's about 25 to 30%. So that's how the retention rate is distributed based on the perspective of certain research that I've encountered. Another thing that I'd like to say is that there are far-reaching implications for this and for the art of teaching and learning. Teachers must become and remain cognizant that students have different modalities by which they learn. And the purpose of learning is to build cognition. And as we all know, cognition means to know. So the goal of teaching is to impart knowledge. And in order for children to cognize and become aware of the concept, the modalities through which that takes place is very important. The direct implication, therefore, is that teachers must be cautious to correlate the teaching modality that is being used in any given lesson to the variety of learning modalities that exist among their students. In other words, it is advisable that a teacher does not only use one teaching modality within a given lesson. And that is why researchers going back as far as Immanuel Kant spoke about diverse teaching strategies, which includes teacher-made charts, which includes the use of smart boards or Promethean boards, which includes, I remember, very fondly also, when I was a boy, my father, who was not an educator, but he was a smart man as well, he made sure that I went to grade 1 with a bundle of sticks. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience, where their parents made a bundle of sticks for them to take to early childhood school. So we were able to count and to do one-to-one correspondence in math by that. That was the beginning of my awareness of tactile learning. And that was a medium through which the tactile modality was activated. Now, you know that kinesthetic deals with energy and movement. So there is also the kinesthetic learners, and they need to get up and move. So for those of you teachers who might experience occasions where your children become restless and disengaged and unmotivated during a lesson, especially a double period lesson where there's a greater chunk of time devoted to teaching and learning, those children who have the inclination to become disengaged or to become restless, you may want to take a look at their learning modality. And it might be that they are predominantly kinesthetic learners, and that they therefore need to get up from their seats, walk around in the classroom a bit without being overly distracting to their children, to their students, their fellow students. And you might see a difference in their level of engagement, in their rate of cognition, and in their ability to recall what they have learned from long-term memory as time progresses. So that's a very important point that one needs to make. Another point that I'd like to make quite hastily is that not only should teachers be cognizant of the variety of learning modalities which exist among their students, but the student himself must be cognizant of his or her own learning modality. What a wonderful thing it would be if at the start of a school year, when a teacher gets his or her students, or the start of a semester, where you do some form of informal survey to determine what dominant mobility rests with each child, and you share that information. I didn't know that my dominant learning mobility was formally that of the auditory. My friend may not have known either, who sat next to me in class, that she had a dominant kinesthetic modality. But if the teacher had made us aware of that, then that might transform the attitude that we had in certain lessons, and it might have propelled us to be more engaged and to be more active in the learning experience as different lessons progress with us. So I wanted to wrap this segment of it up by saying that educators have always been fascinated with what some describe as the phenomenon of learning. I'm not sure it is a phenomenon, but it is often described that way. And one of the ways to demystify that and to make it more clearly understood is to concentrate on the modalities, the pathways, the perception, the sensory role that the learner becomes engaged in when he or she becomes actively involved in a lesson. So with your kind permission, I'd like now to switch my attention to the other part of the topic that I'm asked to speak on, and that is the whole matter of achievement gaps. Now, let me pause, take a breath, and say to you that this matter of achievement gaps has become a very, very weighty matter among parents, teachers, and students, especially over the past 2.5 years. Arising from the current pandemic in which we are all enveloped, is the realization that there is a wide disparity in the knowledge accumulation that students ought to have in school. And what we're finding, and you don't have to be an official researcher to see this, any teacher at all who has his eyes wide open will discover that there are gaps in the achievement rates among students. And by the way, let me hasten to say that we're not talking about learning gaps. And sometimes both terms are used interchangeably, but that is wrong. Learning gaps, according to the research, is not the same as achievement gap. We're not talking about learning gaps today. We're talking achievement gaps. Learning gaps is more process oriented. Achievement gaps is more demonstrative in nature. In other words, when we talk about achievement gaps, we're talking about the ability of the learner to demonstrate what he has learned or what he knows from what he doesn't know. By way of definition, achievement gaps can be defined as a persistent disparity in the academic achievement between minority disadvantaged students and their white counterparts. The other definition that I'd like to read to you too is that achievement gap occurs when one group of students, example, students who are grouped by race, ethnicity, or gender, outperforms another group, and the difference is statistically significant. Now, I don't want to get into too much of the statistical terms right now and make it less interesting for you to continue listening to me. But in order to determine gaps in achievement, statistical formula have to be applied and utilized. And where there is a huge statistical or a wide statistical gap between one group of students, one group of learners or another, that is what we define achievement gap to be. Now, in a pluralistic society, like the one in which I live now in the United States, where there are different ethnic groups, different racial groups, different gender groups, etc., there is a more pedantic, more narrow definition of achievement gap. However, achievement gap does not have to be the difference in performance between Black kids and white kids. I don't know why. The preponderance of research that I'm looking at these days that speak to achievement gap, I don't know why they categorize it primarily as achievement of white kids and achievement of Black kids, because that's not fair. It is too pedantic. It is too parochial to look at it that way. Nevertheless, I'll share with you what the research is saying. The research is saying that when the longitudinal studies are done, which measure the achievement gains of white kids with similar age range, within similar age range to that of Black kids, that white kids are seemingly outperforming Black kids. And that causes me to scratch the remainder of the hair that I have left on my head, because I just don't understand why that is so. But based on what I've been reading in recent weeks, again, the achievement gaps between white kids and Black kids does not begin in school. The research is now telling us that the propensity for that begins before school age. The prenatal experiences that the mother and the child in her womb undergo, the preschool exposure shape and fashion the achievement gap that we are talking about today. So I find that to be very, very interesting to talk about.
I agree. I so agree with you, Dr. Khalid. This is very insightful. And when we think about the Jamaican context, we realize that while the disparity is not so much Black and white and more along class lines or those in rural urban settings, but we are going to table this part of the discussion for the summit because we want to leave some we're whetting the appetites of or those who are participating with us, because our challenge as reflective practitioners is that we are going to follow up on the research. We're going to participate with the asynchronously with the recordings of the summit, and we are going to be rewarding those who are going to now take the information that has been introduced to them and seeing how they can incorporate it into their own practice. So we don't want to give it all away. We don't want to give away the fish. We want to teach how to fish. So I really thank you so much for that very insightful presentation, Dr. Colin Wolfe. And, you know, interestingly enough, I like that emphasis you placed on being able to hear information and visualize it, listening to the radio. Those are all key skills. Maybe one of the questions we can ask everyone to think about in their reflective practice is how can we strengthen those other learning modalities that are maybe the subdominant learning modalities. So for example, I know auditory is not the strongest for many people, and how as educators we can help to have that modality strengthened. So is in this, we are committed to our reflective practice, which Dr. Shari and I hope as she presents in our second session, she'll be able to tap into the you know, the whole reflective practice that we've been talking a lot about in our early childhood sectors. So thank you so much, Dr. Colin, for that. Thank you, Miss Andrea Thomas, for your presentation as well. And we're going to take a slight shift in direction now as we get ready to look at the special education perspective. Now, special education, once upon a time, there was this notion that special education was, you know, it was just everything about it separate and apart, which I'm sure makes all kinds of red flags go off for those of us here in the States when we hear about that separate and apart. But if there is one thing that this pandemic has brought to light, it is how each and every classroom now becomes a classroom that must be able to engage with those strategies that special education practitioners have been trained with as a part of their toolbox. And so as we close out each of these first two sessions with the special education perspectives, I really want everyone to consider how can we bring some of those special education skill sets into our classroom setting, because with all the pandemic learning loss that has been experienced, we are going to need to close up those gaps. And so we're going to need to be able to maneuver between the sense of being a general education teacher and the skill set and the strategies that special education teachers represent. So I am going to turn the rest of this first session over to our Dr. Claudette Peterkin, who is going to give us the engaging diverse learners, the special education perspective, and then we'll be able to have our chat and questions and comments. And I see we are engaged both on the YouTube and here, and so I look forward to that discussion as well. Dr. Claudette, the floor is now yours. Thank you. You're mute.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I thank you for taking this time to be with us. I'm Claudette, Dr. Claudette Peterkin, and I'm part of the JDETF, the special education task force. And today I'm going to bring to you engaging diverse learners. And as you heard from Dr. Collins, some very, very informative ways, and also from Principal Andrea. And I'm just going to give you some, to whet your appetite from the special ed side of it. So if you want more, you have to come to the summit, all right? So we know that diverse learners include students of all abilities, racial and ethnic and cultural and linguistic background, right? The diverse background. However, today the focus is on discussion. We are engaging students with disabilities. Now, as you notice, I did not focus on learning disabilities or cognitive disabilities. I just say disabilities because there are many types of disabilities and some that we are not able to detect unless we go through educational or psychological evaluation. All right, so you might look at little Johnny in your classroom and Johnny's moving and Johnny's doing what he's supposed to do, but there are some disabilities there, maybe when it comes to learning or fine motor skills or holding a pencil. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So the first disabilities that are prominent to us and that I've seen, we can see is like ADHD/ADD. And we know that ADHD is attention deficit disorder, but the H is for hyperactivity. So both ADHD and ADD have similarities. The H is that the student is more hyper, right? So it is the medical condition that a person or a child has ADHD in the development of the brain and activity. And that child is unable to sit in one position too long, or the child might be need some form of self-control. A child with ADHD, it's almost similar if you don't get the child active, like Dr. Colin has said, and moving and engaging and, all around. What will happen is you will find that child, it will trigger a certain behavior. And when that triggers, now you will your lesson is gone wild. It's just like saying, you have an itch in your head, right? For those of you who ever had lice, maybe in Jamaica, and you need to scratch, right? You're telling a child with ADHD to sit down. They cannot help it. So you have to be mindful of that. The next one is multiple disabled. And multiple disabled is a broad umbrella. This term means simply the child or the student has more than one disability. So you might find that the child is ADHD or ADD, and the child have learning difficulties as well, maybe a learning disabled, right? A child who may be cognitive impaired. So multiple disabled is a child that have more than one disability. Cognitive impaired. Cognitive impairment is when the child has trouble remembering. So some of us, when we teach and we give it all our best shot, and you ask little Johnny, what did we learn yesterday? And he go, and you're like, oh my God, I just said it. You have to be mindful. You have to take that into consideration that these type of students, they have trouble learning new things, and it affects their everyday life. So cognitive impairment, it ranges from mild to severe. So again, you might take a look at a student and you think everything is there, but that child might have it mild, right? Some might be a little bit higher, and some might have it really severe that you're able to see it once you look at the child. Autism spectrum. Again, a child who is autistic, the spectrum, we always use the term spectrum because there are different levels. You will find that some student will do the flip or the hand flapping. Some student might not do that. So that's why it is a spectrum. And so that also affects socialization. Those kids might not be able to socialize or communicate effectively. Some might have behavior challenges, some might not. Again, and this is why it's termed as a spectrum. It varies as well from mild to severe or to somewhere in between. Again, we as educators, we have to be mindful. Learning disabled, and we know that learning disabled is the disorder that affects the ability to understand spoken words, written language, mathematical calculations. Sometimes they can get part of it. Numbers might not be some of them. Numbers might be, some numbers might not. It all depends on the child. And intellectual disability, these are the students who are unable to hold like a conversation, you know, one that they can converse and hold, you know, like, okay, but I just said this, and they might not know, right? And then it's which, you know, it's a practical skill that they have to learn how to communicate effectively. All right, so I'm moving along. Unfortunately, some students in our classroom do not address these, some classrooms rather, do not address these diversities. In fact, Howard Gardner said and noted that the biggest mistake of past centuries in teaching has the threat all students as if they were vibrants of the same individuals and thus feel justified in teaching them the same in the same manner. And again, I will go back to what Dr. Collins said, you know, one size does not fit all. What is good for Jerry might not good for Mitzi, even though they might have the same disability. So again, as educators, we have to be mindful of that. And I'm saying this because when I reach the point where we have to get to how do we teach them, all right? And as you know, these students in our classroom, they come from a whole different, with different things. We have the learning style, right? Same thing, learning modalities, how they learn. They come whether, you know, hands-on, kinesthetic, or whatever learning style they come with. So we have to be mindful when we make our lessons. How do we include these students? They're coming, we have some with personal experience, the home environment. And I know some kids in your classroom, they might not have a disability, but they might not eat. They might not have a good sleep last night because something is in the home environment is not healthy, right? Some kids might have to be sleeping on the couch. Some kids might have bed bugs, they can't sleep. And these are things that we have to be mindful of. The readiness level. Some kids are above level, some kids are right on level, and some kids are just below level, right? And we have all this mixture in our classrooms. The ones who comes with, they are motivated, right? The motivators. We have some students come highly motivated. Me. We have some students who are average, and we have some students, boy, they're not interested at all. And again, how do we address all these students in our classroom? And we have some students who come to our classroom with prior knowledge. We have some come with little knowledge, and we have some who never see school. Maybe I was living at grandma's house and grandma didn't send me to school. So again, we have to make sure that we help prepare these students. So what steps do we take to engaging our students? Engaging students in the teaching and learning process can be very challenging for us as educators. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is that you have to know your students. If you don't know your students, it's not going to work. And how do you do that? You make a connection, you make a bond, you let these students know that, Dr. Peterkin is interested in me. I get silly with them, you know, and this can go from pre-K to 12th grade. You know, the guys who come, or 10th grade, maybe in Jamaica, the guys who come with their pants down and yo, it's, you know, my thing is, come on, man, pull up your pants. The girls don't want to see your underwear, you know, things like that. You bond with them so that when it comes to time that if you have to control the behavior, you are able to control the behavior. So know your student, organize your lesson plan, always have a plan B. Differentiate your instruction. And you're going to hear more about that from maybe Miss Janet. All right. Create space for your students to ask and answer questions. Give wait time. Do hands-on activities. What do I mean by wait time? If the students ask a question or raise their hands to ask a question and they're not coming out with it like fluently or right on the mark. Give wait time. That child probably needs time to process what he or she is going to say. All right. And I'm running really through some strategies. All right. So step one, thoughtful process, right? You have to make these unique decisions that are within the grasp of the children, how you meet their style, the ones above level, the ones who are not above level. Provide avenues to acquire content, process, and develop the skill proper, all right? 3, give students options. When you give them options, you're able to, they're making sense of the information. They're able to more interact and engage. And like we said, assessment, you keep on going. Use the questioning strategy so that you're able to, for them to move forward. And we're coming down to the close. I have 2 more points. Students, the principles of the differentiated classroom, all students participate. That's what you want to see in a classroom. Point 2, teachers and students must work together to ensure a continual engagement and challenge for each learner. 3, the teacher responsibility is to coordinate the use of time, space, and responsibilities, and make flexible groupings, include the whole class. That means you cannot tell who is disabled or who is not able to do what. Mix the group so the ones who are on level will help the ones who are not on level. And for the classroom, make time, use of your time, be flexible to the student needs. Always have clear, established individual and group criteria provided towards guidance of success. Managing strategies, always have a variety of strategies such as learning centers, interest centers, learning buddies, and etc. In this way, when you do that, you have them in different areas so that they're able to do creative play or whatever they're learning from their peer. Peer relationship is crucial for students with disabilities. And as the educator, you're always checking for understanding. You're going around and you're assessing, making your assessment. So again, know your content, how you teach it, and look what your final outcome, what are you assessing, and how do you want it to be for them to, what you're looking for them to learn. And the readiness, you're going to reference to reading the skills or the way they think, right? Interest and attitude, you're going to make your lesson based on that. Learning profile and learning needs. And here is some ways you can do your lesson and your tiered lesson plan. Let's break it down. Differentiation can be complex strategies like writing tiered lesson plans. But these are some ways like higher prep strategies and lower prep strategies, and you can look at that. So again, always make sure that these tiered lessons or these lessons are engaging to your students. I know it was a little bit rushed, but I thank you and I hope you did learn something from this. But I tell you what, if you want to know more about the behavior and the actual strategies we do, make it to the summit. I guarantee you will have a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Claudette. That was so much, it was so rich, so many nuggets for us. The chat has been very lively, and so we have school improvement specialists who are on our panel this afternoon, or Dr. Sherian or Dr. Sharika, Dr. Sherian Demetrius and Dr. Sherian Dacres. And so the question that seemed to have gotten the chat a little bit of buzz on our YouTube has to do with how do you if the question was, if I am a visual learner and the lesson is being taught auditorily, what happens to me, or vice versa? If I am, an auditory learner, how do I get strengthened in my subdominant skills, which was, I think, a similar question that I asked, but I saw that it created such a little buzz on the chat. So I didn't know if or Dr. Sherry or Dr. Sharika wanted to address that from the school improvement perspective, because this ties into the gaps that we're seeing that Dr. Collins spoke about earlier. So I'll turn it over to you both ladies.
Thank you, Melanie. I think that's such a timely question, because one of the things that we have identified in most of our classrooms is that teachers tend to teach towards their modality. So if I'm an auditory learner, I teach that way. And so sometimes what happens is that the kid who learns visually or who's kinesthetic learner will likely not benefit from that whole classroom experience. So this is where I have always encouraged you to begin to work on your reflective practice, because when you reflect, you will be able to identify those needs within your classroom and understand, pinpoint the area where there is a need to be addressed. And so then you have to switch it up. You have to create within your classroom that balance. And again, going back to what Dr. Collins said, you have to know your students. Dr. Peterkin spoke about that also. You have to know your students in order to move them forward. And as you look at the whole idea of learning, demonstration of knowledge, and learning and identifying learning gaps, that those things play in what happens in your classroom. So again, that's the great balance, and becoming that reflective practitioner is going to help you in that journey. Sharika?
I am here. Thank you, Dr. Sherry and Demetrius. I definitely I agree with you. And I saw a very ongoing and similar theme across the board from Ms. Thomas and Dr. Collins and Dr. Peterkins regarding that second point you mentioned, knowing your learners, and when I was in the classroom, I was very guilty of that. My learning styles, and I know with the group on our platform where we're sharing our different learning styles, is I'm a visual and a tactile learner. I learned best that way, so automatically we basically would teach because that's how we learn. And we kind of made that conclusion that's how all our learners learn. And we quickly find out that that's not the case. So I was really excited when I heard Dr. Peterkins kind of went back and attest or confirm what Dr. Collins mentioned regarding you have to know your learners. And you brought about that point, Dr. Sharing about that reflectiveness. As educators, we have to definitely hone in and take a step backwards to reflect on our own teaching practices, right? What we are doing. And if we see that how we are teaching, the knowledge acquisition is not there, the master of the content is not there, well, we need to think, what is it that we are not doing? Along with that, Melanie in the chat box was talking about how are we able to, in a classroom where we have 24, 30, 40 students, however it may be, based on different grade level, how do we effectively identify each of our learners' learning styles and be able to differentiate based on our diverse learner to ensure that we are tapping in the needs for all our learners, right? Because the days where it's one size fits all, those days are gone. Yeah. And when we think about our diverse learners coming from different socioeconomic backgrounds, right? Those who may have a learning disability or another particular disability that will prove to be an obstacle or a barrier for them to be successful in the classroom. We have to be intentional about knowing who our learners are and be intentional and not be guilty about being reflective when it comes to our teaching practices so we can better support and enhance our students' academic success. Great points. And I really appreciate
it also takes us to a little place where we have to be that lifelong learner, because knowledge changes, information changes. And if we are all stuck in the year 2000 and and we're in 2022, then there is a difference in what we know then and what is new now in terms of new knowledge and managing your classroom and changing of instructional practices, which will build our own efficacy as educators and the efficacies of the students. So I think very good for first three presenter, Ms. Thomas, very nice discussion as you think of how we can level up as educators and making our game plan a bit different and exciting.
Awesome.
Thank
Melanie?
you. Thank you, ladies, very, very much. And I see the reflective promise, the reflective practice keeps coming up even in the chat. And so we heard from Ms. Thomas the importance of teaching from the heart. We understand from our Dr. Colin Wolfe that one size does not fit all. And then we have our Dr. Claudette Peterkin, who really took us into the special education toolbox that we're going to be challenged to become familiar with. So as we get ready to wrap up this session, I am going to ask Miss Victoria Spence to give us some takeaways, because remember, we are practicing the art of reflection. What is something that we have gotten that we can take back to our classrooms, or that we can challenge you to take back to your classrooms? And then we're going to have a short interlude where you're going to get your note paper, get your pen, jot down some ideas before we move into session 2. Ms. Spence.
I truly enjoyed this discussion today, each and every presentation. I do believe that it starts just like Miss Andrea Thomas was talking about, the love for learning. It starts from the heart. It starts from your connection with your students. And even when we were talking about the different types of learners, trying to incorporate different learning styles into your lessons is so beneficial. It does take more planning on your part, but because of that care that you have for your students, you will know that you're trying to reach them in the way that you are. So it's so important to take the time to look into them. And even if you can just incorporate 3 to 4, over the space of time, because you're like, I know that it will benefit, it will reach each one of them. And maybe I am a visual learner, but hearing it auditory from my peer may be more helpful than me listening to my teacher. Or I'm a kinesthetic learner and being tactile, and just the explanation and the collaboration will be more helpful to me. So I do agree with everything that everyone was saying. I got so many nuggets to take back for myself, and I do appreciate just being a part of this discussion today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spence. She's our newest vice chair in the early childhood education sector. I am going to put up the program that shows the presentations that we've had while I play some music in the background, and our presenters could maybe grab some water, refresh themselves. The next round, session 2, is coming up. I'm going to ask Miss Camille Smith-Brown and Miss Romaine Robinson to be prepared to give the wrap up at the end of session 2. So I want you to keep that at the back of your mind as well. So get your pen, get your paper, and it is time to reflect. And please feel free to share in the chat, on the YouTube chat, on the chat, just something that you can take away. And we're going to walk the walk of the reflective practice. Thank you, everyone.
Your work can feel much smoother with Monday.com WorkOS. This
DJ Easy, you make the thing them easy. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to get ready to come back on, come gather together for our session 2. I hope everyone got some great nuggets that they can take back to their classroom. Feel free to share in the chat on YouTube, on the chat here, just any nuggets. Everything is being recorded, and so we're looking to see the reflections that will be integrated into your practice. So welcome back, everyone, to session 2. And I am going to turn the session over now to Miss Leslie and Samuel. She's going to introduce our speakers for this session. And here we're going to be talking about reimagining teaching and learning. We're going to hear from our Dr. Shari and Demetrius. We're going to hear from Dr. Nadine James. We're going to hear from Miss Janet Vienna Clark. And we're looking forward to a wonderful continuation of this rich discussion on how we are going to take our students to that next level. Miss Leslie Ann.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Baker. Good afternoon, colleagues. I am delighted to be with you all this afternoon. We have yet another dynamic group of presenters, as Mrs. Baker mentioned, for this session 2 of Meeting the Challenges of Education Today, Reimagining Teaching and Learning. Allow me the privilege of introducing them to you. Sherian Demetrius, PhD, was born in the town of Falmouth, Jamaica. She is an alumna of William Knibb Memorial High School and began her education in teaching at Sam Sharp Teachers College and then at the University of the West Indies. Dr. Demetrius migrated to the United States in 1987, where she continued her education as an educator. She holds a bachelor's degree in elementary education, a Master of Science in varying exceptionalities from Nova Southeastern University, and a doctorate in curriculum and instruction, reading and language cognition from Barry University. She currently works as a curriculum support specialist with Miami-Dade County Public Schools in Florida, and as an adjunct professor with Barry University and the University of Phoenix. Being very active in both her church and the education community in South Florida, her work with youth and adults is evidenced in the many workshops that she has led over the years and the influence she has had in encouraging others to become educators. This evening, Dr. Demetrius will help us to explore cultural responsiveness teaching. Her motto is discover your brilliance at any age from anyone. Dr. Nadine James holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Biophysics from the State University of New York, Buffalo's Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. She also runs the nonprofit organization Illumination, I love that, Inc., in the state of New York. Illumination, Dr. Nadine and her team illuminate the minds of the next generation of underprivileged and underserved students in kindergarten through 12th grade by providing science, technology, engineering, arts and mathematics, STEAM-based tutoring, test preparation, mentorship, related services and programs. Illumination, Inc., a multinational program that she has created with her team, attracts students from the USA, Barbados, Belize, Jamaica, and Trinidad. This afternoon, Dr. James will share her thoughts on student success strategies. Janet Viana Clark combines a strong passion for English, history, social studies, science, and writing expertise to motivate and inspire children while creating a challenging and fun learning environment. Ms. Clark was also born in Trelawney, but grew up in Manchester, Jamaica. She attended Homewood Technical High School, after which she matriculated to Bethlehem Teachers College, where she earned a teaching diploma in elementary education. She later obtained her bachelor's degree in literacy education from the University of the West Indies. Ms. Clark's teaching career, which began in Clarendon, has taken her to the parish of St. James, then to the Bahamas, and to the United States, where she obtained her master's degree in literacy and learning. She is currently a talented and gifted coordinator at a middle school in the USA and is also pursuing her PhD. Ms. Clark will be sharing her perspective in special education. Please join me in welcoming our presenters as we begin session 2 with Dr. Sherry-Ann Demetrius, who will discuss cultural responsiveness teaching.
Good afternoon again. Good afternoon. I just want to say how excited I am to share with you this session number 2. As we begin, I know that you've done first session, and what I want you to do is to go to the bottom of your screen and look for that reaction button. When you found that reaction, I would like you to take one of those reactions and post it next to your name so we can know how you're feeling. So Mr. Dale, can you tell me what are some of the reactions you're seeing?
I'll answer for you, Dr. Sherry-Ann.
Okay.
I see a smiley face.
Smiley face. Okay,
So
someone is
smiley face.
happy.
Somebody's happy. I saw somebody with the halo on top of their head.
Okay, a little angel.
Yes, I see laughter. Somebody with 2 big smiley faces.
I love that. I love that.
I think just based on the chat, people are very engaged, and the information is being absorbed, and I think that people are grateful to be here.
I am loving that. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, I'm going to take the next 10 or so minutes with you because I want to bring you to a level of understanding of what is a culturally responsive classroom. What does that look like? And I would like to invite you to look at how does your students benefit from being in a culturally responsive classroom. Now, I will take you through this presentation by using 3 questions. The first one is the what. What's their level of understanding? The second one is why is this important to you as an educator? And 3 is how can culturally responsive practices benefit the students you teach? And today I want to remind you that that begins at the preschool level and it extends up to the tertiary level. So bear that in mind. So as you think, I know I spoke earlier on about being that reflective practitioner, and you've been encouraged on several levels to start that practice. And we're going to provide you later on this year with some guidance as to what that should look like and how you can develop those skills. So today I want to encourage you to think about your own practice now. And think of the scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is the lowest score you can assign to yourself, and 5 being the highest score. How mindful are you about creating culturally responsive classrooms? And I want you to just assign yourself a number, and I know you have paper close by. If you don't, just hold that number in your mind, because when I'm finished, I want to see what kind of growth has taken place in this talk that we'll have. So think of your number and jot it down somewhere, or think about where you are mentally. Now, let's talk about what this really is. It is said that the culturally responsive or the relevant teaching is a pedagogy that empowers students intellectually. And I have that word highlighted in red because earlier we talked about closing the achievement gap and what that looks like. And we want you to think about how as an educator, you can culturally meet the intellectual needs of your students. We are also looking at it from a social point of view, emotionally and politically, by using what we call our cultural reference to impact the knowledge and the skills and the attitudes of your students. When you are able to do that, you are creating a student who is willing and ready to learn. Let's see what this TED Talk has to say about a culturally relevant classroom. And I'm going to share with you 2 minutes of this video.
Dr. Sharian, I can't hear anything.
You can hear it?
And I think your PowerPoint might be frozen.
All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to share again.
Okay.
Let me uncheck these boxes and check them again. So as we try to share again, I want you to think about your number where you are. Can you hear it now?
Trying to make sure that their students are getting the key knowledge
Are you
that
able
adds
to
their
hear it?
culture into it.
Yes, ma'am.
We see it also inside the classroom as well on a college level. Brown University actually has a department focusing on culturally responsive teaching as an important aspect of student development. Well, my friends, I don't know if you can tell by the beautiful face that I put on for you today. I used some great moisturizer, but I've been working in student development and higher education for about 12 years now. And what I do recognize is as important and essential it is to be culturally responsive in the classroom, it is even more so to make sure that we are representing our students' cultural influences and their representation outside of the classroom.
So what this TED Talk video does is to bring us back to the place where we understand that it is our responsibility to create that classroom where the students are able to learn in an environment in which they feel that they are welcome, they feel safe, they can make mistakes, and they know that that's their environment for learning. I wanted to share that video also because I wanted to be understood at the tertiary level that it's your responsibility. At the primary and secondary level, it's your responsibility also. And at the preschool level, it is your responsibility to create that classroom. So how can you do this? And I want you to think along with me and make notes as you go along, because I am hoping that you'll be able to take something from what I share with you back to your classroom where you're able to start building that culturally responsive classroom. Teachers must identify and understand the learning styles of our students. I know earlier on in our first set of presentation, that was shared. It is important that we understand that and embrace it. Again, as I reminded you all a few minutes ago, that you cannot depend on the way you learn to teach your students. You have a classroom with various needs, and every child is different. You are, again, encouraged to create a learning environment where your students are comfortable enough to sit back, relax, and learn. Do they feel safe in your classroom? Do you take their incorrect answers and use it to build them instead of letting them feel uncomfortable? No, Johnny, let's think about this again. Let's see if we can identify where this answer lies. And you guide that student to that pathway where the student is able to discover what the correct answer is. Is that one of your practices? In a culturally responsive classroom, you take the students' prior knowledge, all those rich experiences they have had at home, in their communities, and you take that and use it to build or to scaffold their learning. The adult learner, that is very key to their own development also, because the adult learner comes into your classroom well-versed with a wealth of knowledge and experiences and just really ready to share. So you need to embrace that. Teachers must teach the entire class in a way that students can relate to and understand every aspect of their own culture and embrace it. The challenge often is that we are into ourselves, and what we do is depend on ourselves, and we don't really open up ourselves to learn new things and to really apply ourselves to meeting the needs of every student in our class. As a result, we want a teacher in our classroom who is committed to learning, a teacher who is committed to learning and also committed to the reflective process. That teacher becomes the reflective practitioner. And you might say to me, why is this important? And I'm going to say to you, it is important because each student in your classroom desires or should be exposed to a teacher who is culturally responsive, who utilizes culturally responsive strategy to support the learners in the classroom. As you reflect, is that you? Are you at a level 1, level 2, or level 5? And it's okay to be at 1. The important piece is that you must recognize where you are and take steps, positive steps, to build your competence or your efficacy in dealing with your students' needs. As you begin this process, I want to encourage you to understand your own identity. You know who you are. You know who you are as a learner. You know who you are as a teacher. And you take steps to meet the needs of your students. My question to you today is you reflect about your own classrooms. Do you know your students well? Do you understand them? Do you know what their needs are? Have you ever sat next to one of your students at lunch and listened to something that a student might want to share? Do you know if they live with their mamas or do they live with their grandparents? How much do you know your students? As a fellow educator, learning about your students must begin at day 1. You can't wait until you get to the middle of the year where the kid is not doing well and you want to find where the parent is. You need to start developing those relationships at the day that student enters your classroom. Create a learning community so that that student desires to come to school every day. He or she has a passion for learning. That child wants to see their teacher. They want to see their friends. This is their second home. Make that classroom that place for them. Again, I encourage you to start building on their life experiences. Because when they tell you about the day they went and caught a fish in the ocean, you yourself might never caught a fish, but that experience can help to propel your instruction in another direction. Set high standards for every student in your class. A student with exceptionalities, that student high standard must be set for him. The student who excels above and beyond the range of the students in your class. High standard must be set for that student because you must accelerate that student learning to the place where that student will feel fulfilled and feel like a success. These tiny 5 steps that I'm sharing with you today, you can pick one and you can go back and you can start that process of reimagining what your classroom can look like because it's culturally inclusive and culturally responsive. Now, earlier on when we began this process, I asked that you write a number 1 through 5 about where you are as a culturally responsive educator. And I want you to revisit that question. I want you to think about your own actions the last day you were in the classroom, which would have been Friday. Where do you measure up on the ladder between 1 and 5? As I said before, it's okay to be a 1. It's okay to be a 2, because there is an area for growth. So I close this presentation with the thought that you will reevaluate your classroom. Just go into your classroom, sit for a minute, close your eyes, and think about all those little boys and girls who will come in the next 5 minutes to be in your room. Think about how you're meeting their needs and what you can do as on the road to be a reflective practitioner, to guide them and to create that learning environment where they want to come to school and they want to share. They want to be there. So welcome them and think about your own action, your practice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sherry. And I love that. Close your eyes and think, see each student's face in your mind and think about how, reimagine. I love that. So we are going to turn over to our Dr. Nadine James, and or Miss Vivian Clark will follow directly after her. And we are, as we continue to whet your appetites with these 10 minutes nuggets packed presentations, I just want to encourage all of you who are watching, jot down your takeaways, because we have some surprises planned. I don't want to give it away, but make sure you're being very reflective. Dr. Nadine, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Good afternoon, everyone. The topic of my talk today is synopsis of strategies to enhance social and emotional learning. So I will be speaking, I'll be giving you a brief introduction and giving you a definition of motivation, the 3 levers that stimulates motivation, what's the connection between motivation and emotion in terms of learning, and faculty, the obstacles to motivation in terms of, from the faculty. And I'll also speak about the faculty boosting motivation, positive emotions, and learning. But before I move on, I just wanted to share this. On December, I want to say this. So as I go on, I'll be using strategies throughout, and I request that, you share in the chat, if you recognize anything. So on December 14th, 2009, it was the day before my PhD proposal defense, and I was leaving the lab to go to my car to go home. And I was crossing the street in the pedestrian crossing. And the next thing I knew, the upper right side of my body and my neck was going down on the bonnet of a SUV. I fell backwards to the left, and this vehicle kept driving, turning the person driving the vehicle turned the vehicle to the left. And both my knees were crushed, my right elbow, and I sustained injuries to my lower back, my neck, all parts of my body, and I broke my sacrum. However, I got up from that, and 1 year later, exactly 1 year later, I completed my PhD on December 15th, 2015. Sorry, 2010. So I'm just sharing that as my motivation to get up and do what I had to do. Now, according to the CUNY Office of Institutional Research, about 11% of the freshman enrollment, about 11% of students enrolled in the freshman class between 2019 to 2022 fell. It fell by 11%. And according to the CUNY Office of Institutional Research, this was due to what they said, the fiasco, the remote learning fiasco. And according to them, because high school students were allowed to be absent from in-school learning, this was the cause. So this impacted learning, and they said the continued school closures and online instruction had a severe impact on learning across grade levels. So it was found that 97% of the educators reported that learning declined, and 57% of the educators said that their students were behind in terms of their social emotional progress, at least 3 months behind. So why do we as educators, why is it that students aren't already motivated? Why aren't they coming with their own motivation? Why should we motivate them? Shouldn't students already have that? Like whether they're online or they're in person, shouldn't they already be coming with their own motivation to learn? But no, they don't. They don't have that motivation. We can't assume that they all have the motivation to learn. And so that's something that we have to pay attention to. So what is the definition of motivation? So according to Ambrose et al., motivation is the personal investment an individual has in reaching a desired state or outcome. And according to Linda Nelson, motivation is, in the academy, the term motivating means stimulating interest in a subject and therefore the desire to learn it. So when a student is motivated, this student is takes ownership of their education, and they're effectively learning. And as they're effectively learning, this is increasing their performance, and they're seeing this in terms of their grades. And as they're getting this increased performance, it encourages them. So they're excited, they get emotional, they're excited about this increased performance. And so this excitement wants them to perpetually be excited about their learning. So, they continue this cycle. So there are 3 levers to influencing a student's motivation. There is the first lever is value. Then there is the nature of the environment. Then there is the belief in their ability to succeed. And according to Ambrose et al., these 3 levers comprises what's called the efficacy of expectancies. So when you think of value, you should ask the question, do students see value in meeting their goals? And think of nature, how helpful is their learning environment? Is it providing them with what they need? Are they comfortable? The speakers before spoke about this. Dr. Sharian spoke about this. Are they comfortable in that learning environment? Do they, when you think about the belief in the ability to succeed, do students believe they're able to accomplish their goals? So what is the relationship between motivation, learning, and emotions? Well, we learn from our brain, right? And our emotion comes from our brain. And so learning it's not something that's forced, it's not an indoctrination, it's not coercive, nor is it a dictatorship. Learning is fun, it's supposed to be fun. Learning is emotional, it's intellectual, it's moving, it's multidimensional, as some of the speakers spoke about before, and layered. It touches the mind, it touches the emotions, it touches the spirit. So there are some, faculty-generated obstacles to motivation. There's also student-generated obstacles to motivation, but I'm going to focus on faculty for this talk because it's, time constrained. So some of the faculty obstacles to motivation is, one, is the classroom or the environment, is it supportive? It's having an unsupportive and daunting classroom environment, right? And two, it's the faculty member or the teacher setting unclear expectations to the point where sometimes the students, as well as their parents, are left like disillusioned, right? And number three is the faculty, does the faculty have an attitude that few students in the class will master their challenging course, right? So if you're a faculty member and you have this mindset that few students will master this course, then you're leaving the students with a mindset that they can either sink in this course or swim. And so it's demoralizing, right? So there is, I'm sorry, just a second here. So the positive and negative emotion, as you can see here, this picture is showing us a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, right? So according to Eric Hobson, he found that if faculty held an attitude that every student could learn and excel, students actually were highly motivated to learn, right? And so if the instructor's attitude accounted for 27% of students' positive motivation and 32% of students' negative motivation. So their students, 32% of students became demoralized based on the attitude of the faculty. So have you ever heard anything, have you ever heard or said to your students, your teachers, your family or friends, I don't think this is for you. I don't think you're the best fit. Maybe this is not for you. Like, have you ever said anything like that or heard anybody say that? And if that's the case, then that's demoralizing. Also consider the course structure accounts for 23% of positive motivation and 26% of negative motivation. Sorry. Okay. All right. So how can faculty support in terms of boosting the motivation of their students? So according to Raffini, there are five bases to intrinsic motivation. There's a lot more than that, but it was categorized in 5. So there's autonomy, there's competence, there's belonging, self-esteem, involvement, and enjoyment. And so I'm going to use this, this project. One of my students is a 4-year-old, her name is London, as an example of the strategies that can be used. So so at Illuminate Station, we have a program called Cancer Mancer Reimagined. And so one year we focused on breast cancer. So this is London's, she was 4 at the time, this was her project. She chose a tennis racket. And this lady, this is a woman who had breast cancer. She was going through treatment and she lost her hair. So London gave her a pink hat. And she also gave her this, I don't know if you can see this little pink thing here. And so I said to London, what is that? Right? I didn't understand, I didn't get it. Like, why do you have something over the mouth right there? And she's like, well, it's her tooth. And I said, well, why does she only have one tooth? And then she said, well, she lost all her teeth during, as she was getting medicine. And I was like, wow. Now, honestly, London taught me something in that scenario. I did not remember that if somebody's going through chemotherapy or radiation, it can actually affect them in terms of tooth decay and all of that. No, that was just her thinking, and she taught me something. So the strategies here is autonomy. I allowed her to choose her project, and she chose this tennis racket and did it this way. In terms of belonging, the strategy, the real world task here was about the breast cancer and the impact it has on women. And this is what she came up with. And the third strategy in this is we switched, because she was teaching me something that I totally didn't even, that was just not in my radar at all. And it was accurate, right? She taught me that, yes, as you're going through chemotherapy or radiation therapy, it can affect your what's going on in your mouth, okay? So in closing, students may be disillusioned if their learning environment is unsupportive or daunting, if there are unclear expectations from their faculty, if the faculty is demoralizing, causing them to feel like they will sink or swim. And so, you know, the question is, well, how can we support in closing this educational gap? And so what I will leave with you is, we can transform the disillusionment into intrinsic motivation using one or more strategies. That's just a few. There is like 21 or a lot more, as the speakers before told you. I specifically chose in terms of social emotional learning. And so this picture shows motivation exemplified. And you might be wondering, well, what am I saying? So a part of the things that we do at Illumination is to steer the children towards careers in healthcare. Now, right after we did the Kansas Mensa program in the summertime, Kansas Mensa Reimagined, Living Your Best Sustainable Life, I got this picture on the left from Geneva, from her mom, showing her at 3 years old as a doctor. No, I didn't prompt this. I got this from them, right? A few days ago, I got this from another student, from her mother. This is Keandra, 7 years old, dressed as a nurse. So I'm just saying, the motivation here is like, as I'm listening to them into their future and into their future careers, they're showing up and they're expressing themselves in that way. And so these are little ones, but this can also be applied to the older ones. And so that's my talk for today. That's it. Thank you so much. Okay, hold on, sorry. I'm not hearing anything. Hi, I'm sorry.
Excellent, Dr. Nadine, excellent. Motivation and social emotional learning. You are pointing us towards our final segment on our author circle, which is all about motivation. But just before we segue into the close of session 2 and begin session 3, we are going to get our special education perspective from our Miss Janet Viviana Clark, and then we will have our responses from our Jamaican liaisons. Thank you, Miss Janet Clark. Thank you, Dr. Nadine, Dr. Sherry, and wonderful session 2. Wonderful evening. We can see Miss Janet Vienna Clark on the screen. We need to pin her.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. Okay. Are you able to see that now?
Yes, we see you in the presentation. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I am so sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to look at differentiating your instructions to meet the needs of your students. I know that the persons who presented before me, they all talked about, catering to the whole child, making sure that as you plan instructions, they are being planned to meet the needs of our students, looking at students' learning styles and their needs and the importance of doing that. So I'm going to dive a little bit more into differentiating your instructions. We are going to look at the basic principles of differentiating instructions, look at a variety of differentiating strategies, and I'm going to share with you how we implement at least three differentiating strategies within our classroom today. So the first thing is, what is differentiation? It is a set of unique decisions that an educator makes to bring learning within the grasp of all students. It is an instructional approach that encompasses several learning strategies simultaneously. It matches students' learning characteristics to a teaching modality, whether tactile, kinesthetic, or auditory. It provides interrelated activities that are based on students' needs for the purpose of ensuring that all students come to a similar grasp of a skill or idea. And once a solid learning connection is made, students become active participants in the learning process. And our goal is always to have our students be these active participants, and teachers become facilitators in the learning process. The why behind differentiation is very, very important. The students who come to a classroom, with the following characteristics. So how do we make sure that each of these students who's sitting in front of our classroom, some classes have 35, 40, 45 students sitting there. How do we make sure that we're meeting the needs of the students with varying learning styles, interests, personal or prior educational experiences, motivators, reading ability, their confidence level, their competence level, their varying background knowledge, the language barriers that some of them come to us with, their learning disabilities, and also their cultural diversity. How do we make sure as teachers that we are catering to the needs of these students? So here's how we differentiate within the classroom, or here are some recommendations. We make sure that we differentiate by content. That is the input, what students learn. What is it we're trying to make sure that our students are able to master? We differentiate by the process, how students go about making sense of ideas and information, and the product. I think this is, for me, is the most important part. And towards the end, I'm going to share with you why this is so personal for me. So the output, how students demonstrate what they have learned. So there are three focus on differentiation: content, product, process, and the product. And we've looked at those. We've seen what they look like, the culminating tasks, the projects that we ask students to do. And when we do that, are we telling them what they need to do, or we're giving them a chance to explore their gifts and talents? And that is very, very important, because a lot of our presenters tonight, they talked about, making sure that the kids are working to their learning styles and their needs. And I really love that we emphasize that, because at the beginning of the school year, each teacher is encouraged to give the students a learning inventory, which talks about their learning styles and their needs. And the students do chart this, which is very, very important. And it is posted in the classroom. So each time a teacher goes to make an assignment for the students, we always look at this chart to see how are we making sure that we're catering to the needs of our students in terms of how do they learn best? How do our students do that? We remember, as we differentiate, that differentiation must or should be curriculum-based and meaningful for learners. If it is not meaningful, it doesn't matter how much we plan. The students are not going to buy into this. It must be rigorous in content, and application of high-order thinking skills must be there. And even if we are catering to the special needs of students or the students who are reading below grade level, we can make their instructions rigorous if we are catering to their needs, the needs that they come to us with. And we must emphasize in deep themes, ideas, and cross-curricular activities are also very, very important. All right. Let's look at 4-step approach to planning differentiation. Determine the academic content or scale, gauge students' background knowledge, select suitable instructional methods and materials, and design ways to assess mastery of students. And I've shared with you 110 ways that you can, or what you should know about differentiating, or what is it that students can present to us as their final product when we go to differentiate instructions. But I wanted to focus in our zoning on a few that I've used, and I think they are very effective. We've designed different structures, develop a solution to community problem through project-based learning. We've designed web pages and monthly community forums through soapbox. Sometimes we've written books. Students have used this strategy to write their own books and publish their books. They've designed board games, they've led symposium, they've created subject dictionaries, they've created or developed a museum exhibit, they've written letters to the editor, submitted writings to a journal, magazine, or a newspaper. So these are just some of the things, some of the differentiated instructions that we've employed within our classrooms. Now, it is important for us when we're choosing differentiated instruction to choose the right strategy to enhance the student engagement. And I learned this a long time ago, that when we're trying to implement strategies within our classroom or the learning environment, it is very, very important that we find just 3 or 4 strategies that we really love, and we master them and we use them and we engage students with them, instead of every time they come with a new strategy, we take them and they say, yeah, this is the thing that must be done. This is the technology thing, because during the pandemic, everybody's using technology. So we have to expose the kids to all the education, the technology platform. But I learned that if I can take 4 strategies, own them, master them, use them with our students, they are more effective than every day I'm implementing a new strategy. So there are 4 that I wanted to share with you. The first one is a choice board, journaling, tiered assignments. I know Dr. Peter King talked about that a little bit today, and open-ended assignments. These are 4 my favorite, and I'm going to share why. Choice boards, as the name suggests, is a choice. This is where students are given choice. So when we've identified the students in our classrooms or school, and we learn what they're good at, what's their learning styles and their needs, we go into making sure that when we plan assignments, we use a choice board. And choice boards give students the opportunity to participate in multiple tasks that allows them to practice skills they've learned in class, or to demonstrate and extend their understanding of concepts. From the board, students either choose or are assigned to 3 adjacent or diagonal tasks. Choice board add a new dimension to your classroom. It offers an alternative to standard assessment. So instead of the students doing a multiple choice or a fill in the blank or writing an essay, they do get this choice to choose how they show their mastery of a topic, and they provide educators with a variety of ways to check for students' understanding. And I do have 3 examples of a social studies choice board here, where the students get to choose what they want to present. And because the PowerPoint will be available, I think participants do have the chance to view these as 3 choice boards. But a choice board is something that I just love to do with my students. I love interactive journaling. So oftentimes when we think of journaling, we think of, students sitting and being given notes, and they're taking their notes and they're demonstrating their understanding. And then maybe at the end of the week or at the end of the class, we do a journal check to make sure that the students have done everything that we've asked them to do. Or when I was an English teacher, my students did journal writing, because I thought that if students journaled and gave their thoughts without a structure, without structure, they would get to love writing. But I've noticed and used journaling over the past 3-4 years as a means of a differentiation tool that can be used across the entire curriculum. And now that we've had the pandemic, we're not giving students the meat composition books anymore. Their journaling is an interactive, so it's on Google Classroom, and every week the students get a chance to write and tell us, show us or demonstrate to us whether they understand the concept that we're teaching or not. But I love journaling through the lenses of students producing. So what we do is, we have this great app called Book Creator. And we have students, the teacher invites the students to Book Creator. And I think it is free for teachers. So if that's something you're interested in, this is just a phenomenal app. So students are able to demonstrate their understanding of a content through writing. And the good thing about journaling is that the Book Creator app is, when students are done, they do have the opportunity to publish their book. So we have students who during the pandemic, we gave them an opportunity just to share their feelings about how they are managing through this pandemic, because we take it for granted that because students were in school every day, we made sure they had technology, we made sure they had free lunches and meals, and with the daily checking, everything was okay. But the stories that these kids had to tell throughout the pandemic. So we gave them a chance to journal through all of this, and the kids were able to produce books. So they got their books published, and they were able to share with us what they went through. And it doesn't even have to be the pandemic. It could be a mathematical concept. It should be history. When we talk about history in our school, and the students are able to compare what went on in that historical period to what's going on now, and look at the similarities and the differences, journaling is a phenomenal differentiated tool to use with our students. The next one, and I have examples of journaling, which is also included in the presentation. The next one is tiered assignments. And I got so excited when Dr. Peter King talked about tiered assignments. It refers to assignments that are tiered by level of difficulty or completeness. And I loved what tiered assignments does. Students are given a topic or a concept to learn, and then they're all able to show or demonstrate their understanding through different tiers of the instruction. When we allow the students at all levels to complete the same assignment at the best of their ability. They create an assignment in this manner, allows the teacher to present content at varying levels of complexity, as well as allowing students to use different strategies to share their knowledge. For example, when we're talking about religion, we have students who will, do a flip grid for us. They're demonstrating what are the customs or types of worship, prayer, house of worship, etc., that surrounds various religion. And then the tier 2 students, they're moving a little further. They're going into what are the major contemporary problems and issues facing religion in the world. They create a Google slide or a PowerPoint presentation, and based on this, they have a Socratic seminar to demonstrate their understanding of religion. So they're moving to another level in tier 2. In tier 3, students debate the issues of religion, each side expressing a different viewpoint. They must provide credible evidence to validate their viewpoints. And after they've done all of this research and talking and discussion, they do present their information through philosophical chairs. So we are all learning about religions, the various religions. We're looking at the pros and cons of religion, and each tier is learning from each other. And the last one, and I think this is one of all those that I presented, this is one of my favorite, an open-ended assignment. An open-ended assignment refers to giving the student choice as to how far they take their own learning, making them both responsible and accountable for their own education. In this way, students can be given choice of both assignments, conduct, content, and product delivery. So, and this always cracks me up. During Black History Month, because we focus so much on, the impact that African Americans have made in our society. So this quarter, I get a chance to teach this phenomenal 7th grade team, and I said to them, we're going to look at scientists, African American scientists, and we're going to do a research, and we're going to present this research. And I gave them everything that they needed to research. But they had to present this, and everybody's like, should I do a Google slide? Should I do a rap? I'm like, no, this belongs to you. Come on, let me see what you can do. What is it you can present? How can you present this? Just wow me. And they're like, what is the wow factor, Ms. Clark? I said, just come on and just wow me, students. So this open-ended assignment gives students the choice to do whatever they want to do. As long as it's clean, they can come and present this. And sometimes we are blown away by what students are able to do if we do not fit their learning in a box. So open-ended assignments is just something that I love. And here's some of the open-ended assignments that students can do. They can do project-based learning. They can do podcasts, public service announcement, a poetry slam, art project, and a silent action, debate, panel discussions, call-in programs. They have gallery walks and reenactment of historical events. These are some of the things that they can do, but in an open-ended assignment, they have to determine whether or not this is what they want to do. So I do love open-ended assignments, which gives students a chance to dig into their creativity and their learning styles to demonstrate their learning. Thank you so much for taking a walk with me through differentiated instructions for our learners. Thank you, everyone.
Excellent, Miss Janet Vienna Clark. Excellent, excellent. And we are down to the wire. So we have 3 minutes. I don't know if Miss Andrea Thomas and Dr. Dale, if there is anything from the chat that you wanted to share in 90 seconds so that we can give 45 seconds apiece to or Miss Camille Smith-Brown and Miss Romaine Robinson to do a quick response as we tie up this session and get ready to go into all the culmination of what we've been talking about regarding motivation and really meeting the learner where they are with our authors circle or authors chat, because that we're going to be modeling it for you. So Dr. Dale and Miss Andrea, anything from the chat that you wanted to share that was interesting?
Just excellent presentations. People are thrilled and applauding. I mean, just a lot of applause. The wealth of information that is being delivered this afternoon is beyond what we expected. Many people are glad to be in the session, and last time I checked the numbers, we had about 85 people viewing the session. So just awesome information.
Yes, I beg to second that. Lots of people are getting lots of great, good, meaningful, excellent information that I'm sure they'll take into their work.
Well, that is the challenge. Anything else stands out to you from the chat, Dr. Dale?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I did present a modified protocol, that our guests and attendants can use. Something that you agree with, something that you'd like to argue with, because especially we had a really sort of robust response around learning modalities. I think that's something that we're probably going to be drilling down more into as we go throughout the year, because there are questions about like how we do learning modalities, I mean, how we identify them, how we, where do they come from? Should we encourage students to develop other modalities, even as their dominant ones develop? So I remember that especially from Dr. Wolf's presentation. But so far, a lot of people are pleased, and we are pleased that they are pleased.
Excellent, excellent, wonderful. So we are about to have our responses from our liaisons. We have Mrs. Camille Smith Brown, my Holy Childhood High School alum, who is on the primary and secondary task force. And then we'll hear from Ms. Romaine, and then I'm going to give what you're going to need to do to get a prize or surprise. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Melanie. It was such an awesome experience to listen to all three presenters. Dr. Demetrius really helped us to see how we can build a culturally responsive classroom. Of course, we want to ensure that our learners present to an environment to which they feel very welcomed, and as such, they will feel as if, they belong there, and this will also encourage the learning that they are there, that they present to benefit from. We want to ensure, as was brought out, that we are reflective practitioners, that we constantly reflect on our practice with a view to inspiring our students, incorporating the various cultural backgrounds that they present to us with, so that we can, of course, integrate this into the whole teaching, learning environment to benefit it and to ensure that it progresses as we would have it done. Then we had Dr. Nadine James, we really thank you for incorporating your own personal experience in your presentation. It helped us to see how we can really benefit as social emotional learners, how we can also encourage our students to be better social emotional learners. You really give us some interesting data that really helped us to appreciate that, this post-COVID reality that we face is one that really sees students' motivation on the decline. It therefore charges us as educators to see the importance of ensuring that we incorporate social emotional learning in our teaching learning practice. We thank you for the example of London and your other students within your different practice that you have. We appreciate what you shared with us. All throughout all the presentations, we heard the whole matter of relationship building coming out. And of course, Miss Energy Bunny, we will talk about Dr. Janet Clark. We really appreciated your presentation. This was so lively and helped us to really put in sync all the different aspects of the three presentations we had in this last segment. Really benefited from the different tiers of instruction that you really helped us to own, see how we can move forward to own as we practice differentiated learning in our own practice. We appreciate the book creator app. I kind of wiggled in my seat when I heard it. I really do agree. It mirrors some of the results that I have gotten in my own practice. The book creator app is awesome, gentle people. So we're going to ask you to see if you can incorporate some of what she gave us. Really excellent strategies. We appreciate the input of every single speaker, and we really truly benefited from the whole day. Thank you, Melanie.
Oh, wow. There's not much to say after that, right? However, I did some detailed jottings as well. And I'll speak about Dr. Sherry-Ann, who spoke of cultural responses in the classroom, culturally responsive classroom. And as teachers, we have to be good facilitators. It is our responsibility to create a culturally inclusive and responsive classroom, one which is safe and comfortable. In other words, a student-centered classroom or teaching and learning environment. That simply means one that allows students to be engaging, explore, think critically, make mistakes, and learn from them. And it also provides an opportunity for us as educators to observe, build on students' knowledge, and reflect. Then we moved on to Dr. Nadine, and she reminded us that learning is or should be fun. Likewise, teaching should be fun. Objectives and instructions should be clear. We got very clear insights on why it is important for facilitators to be positive in strategizing the way we motivate and support our students. Allow students to choose and simply guide the process, not dictate the outcome. Allow them to express themselves. And finally, Ms. Clark, who spoke of differentiating your instructions to meet the need of the students. How can we differentiate? Through content, process, and product. She mentioned that content and application is very necessary if we are to cater for our students' needs. She shared ways to assess students' learning, and I recall seeing play in that 100 ways that she shared. We can all agree that play is a very good strategy or technique that produces excellent learning outcomes. So I want to encourage us to integrate play in our lessons. Play, let me remind you though, that play should be purposeful and meaningful. Therefore, it should be guided at all times. I also think that the tiered assignment was interesting. Likewise, the open-ended assignments, a very informative session it was. Likewise, the first session, and we look forward to more interesting topics and presentations. Thank you.
Wow, great sum up from our liaisons, Jamaican liaisons from secondary and early childhood, and remembering our focus cradle to college and career readiness. So we are going to have a 15 seconds moment to stretch because we're getting ready for our author's circle. I have been looking forward to this. We have 3 authors, Jamaican born, and they are our own children of Jamaica, heirs of Jamaica. We're going to be hearing this rich conversation. So we're going to have we may go over a little bit after 6 because I do want to give you the announcements for how you can get your prize and surprises. So we may have to hold on a little bit after 6 to get that announcement because I don't want to take away any of the time from this chat. So we're going to take 2 minutes. If you have your Sunday carrot juice, this is the time for it. Your soursop juice, your rich Jamaican beverage to sit back and enjoy what is coming next.
Brain break.
People think unusual circumstances means complicated taxes. But for a TurboTax Live expert like me,
Okay, we now turn over to our Dr. Sharika Dakras, and she is going to take this session to take us to the conclusion of our first PDF with our authors circle. And so Dr. Sharika, we turn it over to you. Take it away.
Wow, thank you, Melanie. Oh my word. This has been, I can say, a wonderful and insightful almost 3 hours of content. Now, I do not know about everyone else on this platform and those who are in on YouTube, but I am telling you, the wealth of information, I was here taking notes, and I feel extra empowered, confirming what I already know about the various topics that the presenters have so eloquently and so with the depth and knowledge and just passion about their topic have shared with us. And looking at the chat to see the questions and the comments and the feedback going back and forth that has been answered, it has been very, very awesome. And I, on behalf of the chairs for the various sector of education task force, we once again just thank everyone for the information that has been shared. But we are now getting to the end of our professional development seminar today. And for this last segment or last section, we are going to engage in an author circle. And before we kick things off, I want to begin sharing a little bit about the two authors that will join myself on this platform and share about their knowledge, their background, and so forth. And as we go through, and as I go through and share, please definitely ask questions, put those questions or comments or feedback in the chat box, and we will be happy to answer those as we go through. So what I'm going to do right now is just to share my screen, and in share my screen, as I talk about the authors, you will be able to hear more about the work that they do, as mentioned before, and how the work that they do has been so impactful in so many, many ways. So here we go with our first author. The first author I want to introduce you to is Miss Hyacinth Gordon Clark. Miss Gordon Clark hails from the parish of St. Anne, Jamaica. She attended the Maneve Teachers College in Jamaica, where she studied primary education. She also studied at the Edna Manley College of Visual Arts and Performing Arts, where she specialized in drama in education. Her career pathway in education further led her to earn a magna cum laude degrees in elementary and early childhood education at Temple University in Pennsylvania, and also a diploma in school management at Mount St. Vincent University in Nova Scotia, Canada. Hyacinth has served in education field in different capacities, and here are some of those ways. She has been a classroom teacher and a subject matter teacher. She has participated in inclusive of reading and language arts, senior teacher, grade coordinator, and head of performing arts, culture agent, primary and secondary and high school teacher, and a part-time lecturer at Northern Caribbean and International University of the Caribbean. She specializes in using the creative arts to transform her students' lives through developing self-esteem, building character, fostering hope, and maximizing their fullest potential. Hyacinth Gordon Clark was principal of her alma mater, Wat Town All-Age, now primary and infant, for the latter 12 years of her 40 years education tenure. She's a published author since her retirement of her devotional guidebook, Inspirational Spiritual Food for a Healthy, Successful Life. She has also released 2 singles, Time is Running Out and Perfect God. Her other hats comprise a music ministry, doing motivational talks and presentations in school, churches, and a lay preacher. That's our first author, Miss Hyacinth Gordon Clark. Our second author is Dr. Noel Gordon. Dr. Gordon attended the University of the West Indies, where he earned a bachelor's degree in science. In 1990, Dr. Gordon migrated from Jamaica to the United States, where he pursued a career in the field of education. At Montclair State University, he earned a master's degree in human services and organizational development with a major in guidance and counseling services, and a second master's degree in administration and supervision with a major in educator training. Dr. Gordon subsequently earned a doctoral degree in educational leadership from Nova Southeastern University. In the New Jersey public school system, he served in several capacities, and these include teacher, guidance counselor, high school vice principal, director of guidance, director of testing and evaluation, and director of curriculum and evaluation and instruction. Dr. Gordon is also the founder and CEO of Dr. Noel Gordon, LLC. This is a company that focuses on educational consulting, human resource management, quality management, and transformational coaching. Dr. Noel Gordon is a published author of his recent book, You Come First, which focuses on how to live the life you know you deserve. And then a little bit about myself. I am Dr. Sharika Dakers. I am an author, researcher, and a scholar. My work examines the phenomenon of teacher burnout. Additionally, my ongoing research seeks to further understand the impacts of burnout so as to move towards sharing and implementing actionable steps to decrease teachers' experiences of burnout. As an agent of change, it is my deep belief that I have been positioned and have been granted the opportunity to support and empower others by negating the barriers educators face, and then to provide necessary resources to impact change. I'm a prominent advocate for educational equity. And with a solution-focused and growth mindset, I continue to focus on and work collaboratively with stakeholders within and outside the educational realm, nationally and internationally, with the aim, the drive, and the focus of dismantling educational inequities and to develop and implement intentional and practical steps to narrow the achievement gaps among marginalized groups and support educators. I recently published my first book, Death by Burnout, Education's Dirty Little Secret, which can be now found on Amazon. Additionally, and very importantly, I am a proud product and alumni of Albertown High School in Trelawney. Everyone, welcome to tonight's Authors Circle. And with that, we are going to bring on our platform our other authors, Dr. Noel Gordon and Miss Hyacinth. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are excited about the conversation we're about to have this evening. Are you there, Dr. Gordon?
Yes, I am here.
Hello, and Miss Hyacinth, are you there? There she is. Welcome. Great to see your faces. All right, so, you know, I know why I introduced you both, and I know I probably left some things out, such as, you know, where you know, any aspirations or dreams. So I'm gonna say, let's take about 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds for each of you to fill in any gaps that I may have left out in the introduction. Dr. Gordon, we'll start with you first.
Yes, I think Mrs. Gordon, Hyacinth Gordon Clark is muted. Please unmute. I am happy to be here. I'm not sure where to start. There's so much. Ask me the question again.
Absolutely. I was saying that I know I may have left out some pertinent information in my introduction of both of you, and just wanted to provide you 30 seconds before we get the conversation going, just to fill in any gaps or important information that you'll share with those who are listening in.
I think the most important and most pertinent information I want to share here now is to let you know that Mrs. Hyacinth Gordon Clark is actually my sister, blood sister. Actually, from I was a little boy, she took me under her arms, and what I am today, for the most part, is because of the role she has played in my personal life. So I wanted to say.
So big sisters in the house. Miss Hyacinth Gordon Clark, yes, share some information about yourself.
I would also like to say that Dr. Noel Gordon is my last brother, and I saw greatness in him from he was a little boy. And so I'm not surprised today of who he has become. I would also like you to know that I am a graduate from the Edna Manley College of Visual and Performing Arts and Drama in Education is what I love to use when I was in the classroom.
Awesome. And I definitely want to, I'm going to tap in on your experience as a educator, as well as Dr. Gordon's experience, and kind of make some connection with what our presenters this afternoon shared with us in regard to the topics that they have shared and the wealth of information. But before we kind of, tag team and go back and forth with that, I want to start off by just share with us, both of you have come this far in your academic journey as educators, as professional, and your work speaks for itself based on your track records, much to be thankful for. What has kind of been that force behind the work that you do and your accomplishment thus far? And taking that question from the lens as an educator, if you could respond. And we'll start with Ms. Hyacinth Gordon-Clark.
What has been the force in whom I've become? First of all, from a very young child, it was inculcated in me by my parents that education and salvation were the two things that would make me a success in life. And I believe that, and I took my education very, very serious. And although I became a dropout from high school, I did not get pregnant. I dropped out of high school because of poverty. My parents were not able to take me beyond third form, which is now grade 9. But I persisted. I pursued my goal because I had a goal set. And today I am happy that, I have transitioned from a high school dropout to a graduate of Edna Manley, a graduate of Mount St. Vincent, a graduate of Temple, 40 years in education, and retired as the principal of my alma mater.
That is indeed awesome and very commendable. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll follow up about a little bit with another question, but Dr. Noel Gordon, what about you?
Okay, I'd like for you to know that our parents, they believe in education, and even though they only went to primary schools, they sent us to school, but they didn't have the financial resources. When I was a freshman in high school in Hopewood, in my first year, I lived in 3 different homes. Each term, I lived in a different home because my father wasn't able to pay their school fee. So I would negotiate with a new family and spend 3 months there. And then I got through my first year. And I was destined to be a dropout also, not because of my academic abilities, but because of my lacking in financial resources. What happened? You need someone in your life to be there. I remember at that time, my sister was working in Kingston. And when she worked the little money, she would send some for me in high school. And even when I finished high school and was about to go to Jamaica School of Agriculture, she was a pre-trained teacher. And she went to Charlie's Winter House in Brownstone, and she took out a suitcase on credit and took out all the stuff that I needed to go to college. And she sent me off. She sent me off to college. So with the grace of God, with the support, I'm aligning myself with that, because we talk about cultural responsiveness. We need someone in our life to be there, and we can be that person for somebody else. Many people have been instrumental in my life, but I'm talking about the person who has been most influential. We need to be that kind of person in somebody's life.
Absolutely. And you brought up a good point, which kind of connects your most recent statement about cultural responsiveness and what Ms. Hyacinth Gordon mentioned with regards to that support, right? And being able and dropping out of school due to poverty. I know Dr. Sherian talked about that cultural responsive aspect, right? And if we can take this next question from the lens of a primary, secondary educator, or even a tertiary educator, and even early child educator, let's talk a little bit about what, let's talk about that cultural responsiveness. You talk about that support. How important is that support from the ground up, from early child education all the way through to tertiary when it comes to learner success? And not only that, here's another segue. How can educators be that foundation when it comes to student success and that support. Dr. Gordon, you want to take us away first?
Yes, I want this way. I think that we have to espouse the philosophy, the educational philosophy. I'll piggyback on Mrs. Gordon Clark of the effort paradigm. You see, if we assume that students, one set of students will be successful and another set of students will not be successful, then they will rise to the level of our expectation. I talked with my sister some time ago about some students in our school who were from a particular community in what town, St. Anne, and the way they were talked about when we were young, we didn't have much success from that community. But I don't know what happened. Maybe she could speak to that. Those students eventually succeeded, and many of them have done very well academically because somebody believed in. So let me just go over to her and she can build on that. And maybe she can tell us a little bit about those students who were illiterate and didn't know how to read, and now some of them are very successful today.
Okay. I decided that I was going back to my alma mater from I was a child. I said to myself, this is going to be, I never wore shoes to school. I said, this is going to be the first barefoot girl to go back and influence those little children that were coming to school. And so I went back, and then I realized that those children, they were not only children to be molded, but there were things in them to be unfolded. And so they needed somebody there are so many children that I met at school there with a whole lot of potential within them, and they do not know. And then you need somebody to unearth that, to get that out, and to let them know that there is something in you, you can shine. And so, that's what I did when I went back there. I worked with those little children, and from a very early stage, you started helping them to build character. You started helping them to love themselves. You started helping them to see the value that is in them and to see them as selves, as people of worth. And I realized that it worked because so many of them have turned out to be wonderful students who did not even know that they had the potential to do so.
I like that you mentioned that, Ms. Highsmith-Gordon. You made a term a while ago. You said students who don't necessarily need to be molded, but to be unfolded. Looking at that potential, and that's very deep, because when you think about, and I often look at education as a sequential early childhood, right? And Melanie often talks, who is the chair for early child education sector of the education task force, talk about that is a foundation, right? And that is where it starts. That is where that unfolding, that looking at the potential, looking beyond the negative and seeing that small potential that we can unfold, right? And just, I could step back a little bit as a former classroom teacher, that was where impact became greatness. And for students who often hear, you can't, that you can, over and over slowly takes on that shape where they begin to believe that they can. And how impactful that can be, right, Dr. Gordon? What are your thoughts?
Almost definitely. We place so much emphasis on resources. Yes, we should place emphasis on resources, but there are the intangible resources. The question is, how does a child develop their academic self-concept? To believe that I am an excellent person, or to believe that I am not an excellent person? Where does that come from? And how do we get motivated intrinsically, as we heard someone talked about earlier? I don't believe that you can motivate someone, you can inspire them. Motivation comes from within, but something triggers that motivation. So we as educators, we have to be very careful the messages that we send to our students, not just the verbal messages, but also the body language and the lack of response to our students. I was at an event as an adult at the New York University. I was at a forum. I was the only Black person there. And I noticed that when I asked a question, they would respond, but they would elaborate. When anybody else asked a question, they would elaborate on their questions and make them feel important. And I'm saying, as a grown man, I could feel that way. Can you imagine our students in the classroom if we don't pay them that attention? So I believe in as much as we talk about all the resources that are around, we have to start paying more attention to mindfulness. My sister sent me a picture of a young lady, very poor young lady. Many years ago, I went to the graduation in Watertown and I gave this young lady a scholarship. She was going to high school and I didn't remember anything about this young woman. My sister sent me a picture of her. She just graduated from the University of the West End. Barefoot, another barefoot kid. I'm a barefoot boy too, you know. I didn't wear shoes just like my sister. If we wear them on the weekends and to church and all that stuff. But the bottom line, this young lady ended up becoming a medical doctor. She was her neighbor, a medical doctor. Why? I don't know, Velta, Mrs. Sass is going, what do you think happened there? Here with us.
Okay, yes, that story. I remember my brother coming to the graduation. Before I go there, when that young lady was doing her GSAT, you know, they charge for lessons here. And they were not able to pay for the extra lessons, but I would call her into my office and I would give her the money, say, pay for it, pay for it. And then I remember she was so shy. I put her in spelling bee. I put her in the performing arts, JCDC festival. And you know, she started developing her confidence. And I remember my brother coming to the graduation. And when she passed her exam for St. Hilda's High School, my brother offered her a scholarship of $20,000 in those days. $20,000. And if I may share this with you, the mother was so grateful. I was going on a vacation to New Jersey, and she brought me a whole heap of what we call Jamaican pear. Whole heap of pear. And she said to me, carry these and give it to Mas Noel for me. She was so grateful. Today, that young lady, I saw what was in her. I unearthed what was in her, and I showed her that she could be somebody of great worth. And that is what we need to show to our students as educators.
Absolutely. That is impactful. And once again, it's just that intentionality when it comes to making sure. I believe earlier on, it may have been Dr. Peterkins that mentioned about knowing our learners, you know, that knowing our learners beyond their name, beyond their academic performance, but knowing who they truly are, knowing their background can shed so many light into how you're able to provide support. And that brings me to wrapping up our session today, the question of diverse learner. I know Dr. Pekinson took that from a special education lens, and Ms. Thomas talked about that from that diversity aspect. But, you know, as educators, we are surrounded by diverse learners with diverse needs, social, emotional, mental health, and well-being needs. How have you both been intentional about how you satisfy the needs of these individuals so as to enhance their academic success? Dr. Gordon.
I learned early in my career when I was a teacher in Paterson, New Jersey. And this student was very disruptive in the class. And I would be always getting on his nerve, getting on his case and disciplining him. And then the special education teachers are a blessing. She came to me and said, Mr. Gordon, this kid cannot read. Me learning that the student was unable to read changed my approach to him and started paying him attention. I started differentiating. Those days you were talking about differentiated instruction, but I started differentiating the instruction and not just the academics, but to pay this kid attention and to be warm towards him. You know, that young man, the disciplinary problem went away, the problems went away, and he started learning. So I believe that we have to identify the types of students that we have, and also school systems, we should also involve in small learning communities. In what school where we both attended, Teacher Martin used to have us, and I think it was every other Thursday, we would go out and we would cut the grass and we would plant the tomatoes and we would do things outside of the classroom. If we can identify what students like and understanding that math is not just an abstract concept and science is not just an abstract concept, but it relates to something. It relates to a better lifestyle. It relates to career goals. It's different from you being poor and you being rich. And if we start spending more time, as we talk about the academics, we start spending more time in the mindfulness arena, letting kids know that we love them, let them know that we care, genuinely care, not just verbalizing it, because they understand if we are genuine. And if we do that, a lot of things will fall in place.
Absolutely. Ms. Hyacinth Gordon, what are your thoughts?
Somebody mentioned earlier about getting to the hearts of the children, relationship. I can remember clearly, I used to say there were boys were, acting up differently. And, I would say to the teacher, build relationship with them. Go out there, play a little ball with them. Do something with them. And, let them feel like they are part of you. So you see, I'm exceptionally intentional about diverse learners. You see, we need to find out about our students. We need to know about them. Because sometimes we might say, this one gives trouble or that one gives trouble. There's a reason for children not learning. There's a reason for children's behavior. And so what you have to do, you really have to study them and see where they and see what is causing the problem and understand that children learn differently. And whatever you are supposed to do to it. For example, when I went to my alma mater, I hope I'm not talking too long, but when I went to my alma mater, it was an all-age school, and there were young men, boys who came to me at grade 7, and they were not able to read. And so I used the creative arts. When I got the songs and those things and, get them to love it and they felt like a part of me. I played a ring game with them. I played every single thing with them. And so they started to trust me, because if they don't trust you, then they don't want to hear anything from you. But once they trust you and they find out that they love you, then you can have them eating out of your hand like a pet chicken.
That is, you know what, and I did see Ms. Hyacinth Gordon in that conversation about building relationship. It goes a long way, and you are absolute. It's like, and I hate to use this terminology. It's like that. What they say is like you I don't want to say bait and switch, but you bait and keep, right? You hook them, and they can feed them, get that relationship building going. But you also talk about, which Dr. Colin Wolfe addressed in his presentation, about learning modalities, right? And being able to, as I mentioned before, you build that relationship, you get to know the learner on a professional, personal level, but also on that academic level, what works best, right? So we talk about engaging our diverse learners. You talked about addressing that learning modalities that Dr. Wolfe mentioned early in his presentation, then that special education aspect lens, right? Now, in the second section of our presenters this afternoon, one of the areas I want us to talk about in wrapping things up is that success. How individuals from the early child education can we have that crosswalk between ECE, primary, secondary, all the way to tertiary? Yes, these may be coming to be adults or so forth, but they also need to have those foundational strategies in order to be successful. So I would love to hear from both of you. How were you able to build that foundation in imparting those strategies for learners to be successful? Ms. Hyacinth Gordon, we will start with you.
Okay, one of the things that I did, I helped the children to understand what is success. Because children need to know what is success. They need to understand that success is not something that you can buy or inherit. It is something that you have to work for. And I always try to focus on the 4 P's for success. Every one of them has a purpose. God created every single one of us for a purpose. And what you need to do is to find your purpose. So you find find their purpose. Another thing is planning. You have to help them to plan a life that is better than their parents. Better than, for example, my father rode a donkey called Iron. I drive a RAV4. You know, I remember saying to a young man, "Oh, what you wanted? I want to drive truck." I said, "Boy, you must say you want one truck company. Your father drive truck, you must do one truck company." Well, if he falls out driving truck, it's all right. But at least aim big. Aim big. Have a passion, because that is what is going to keep you going. When you have the passion for the thing, regardless of what is happening, you are going to keep going, come what may. And the persistent, nothing is going to stop me. And then you have to, they help them to understand that you are the product of what you put out.
Wow. Dr. Gordon, before you chime in, I have to, you know, just kind of slip on in for a little bit. You know, I like what you mentioned. You know, your father drove a truck, aimed to be the owner of a truck company, because, and you're absolutely correct. You know, I think in the chat that I'm on right now, you know, Miss Andrea Thomas, who presented earlier about engaging diverse learners during the pandemic, she said educators need to have that insight. And I'm going to go a little bit further, that insight as to how can we provide the strategies that our learners need. You know, you mentioned a good point, because when I first started as preparing to be an author, I didn't know, you know, my why. I thought I knew my purpose, right? I thought I knew my purpose. And it was mentioned earlier that reflective thinking kind of brought me back to where I found my foundation, my why, right? Because I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Why am I doing this? And I had to constantly ask myself, Sharika, why are you doing this? And it was that, no, that's not a good enough reason. Why? No, why? Like digging, you know, that low hanging fruit, that deep internal thought, why? And be gravel in it. Be true to yourself. And it's so important that when we talk about success, and as an author, and as well, Dr. Gordon, as authors, we know the why, the purpose behind our story, behind our journey, behind our books, behind your songs. Why? And not only that, we also know the audience with which our story will impact them. You know, so Dr. Gordon, and we'll come back to you, Ms. Hyson. Dr. Gordon, share with us, what are some of those success strategies that has paved and made that foundation?
First of all, let me correct. My father wasn't planning on buying a truck. My father had a donkey. We call the donkey Iron, a red donkey. That was our mode of transportation. In those days, when you had a donkey, you were a big thing in the community. Yeah. Listen, people are embarrassed of where they're coming from. Listen,
no, the story goes a long way.
Is where you're going. That's what's important. But I believe, I'm going to get a little personal here. I believe that if you have that innate desire to be successful, ever since I was a little boy, I want to be successful. I was asking my sister the other way, where did all those books come from? We had so many books, you know. As a little boy, I remember when I was little, they used to spell the words, and I knew what they meant. So I was getting out all of their secrets because I could read from when I was very little. But anyway, we had so many books. So many books. So when I read these books, you know, it was about voyaging abroad, Africa, all about. And I just started dreaming as a youngster that I wanted to be successful. One thing I said, I'm not going to die poor. I've got to be successful. Hard work is not the key to success. If that were the case, then my father would be a millionaire today. He worked hard, but you know, the strategic thinking, the opportunities that present themselves, the critical thinking. So as a person, and if our teachers can instill this in your students, show them the why, the reason to learn the math, the reason to learn the English, what is able to take them out of the poverty situation, what can change your life. And that kept me when I was in high school and I was going through hell and high water, no money. I mean, I walked from Spalding to K Valley trying to bum right, trying to get home. I couldn't, you all know where Spalding's is, and you all know where K Valley is. I had to beg ride when holiday time come around. I had to clean my teeth without toothpaste and bathe without soap in college as a youngster. When I went to the rest of the West Indies, when everybody else went home for Christmas holidays and for Easter holidays, I had to be on that campus, maybe me alone or 2 of us or 3 of us on that campus for the entire Christmas holidays. I hated Christmas for years, even after I was a grown man. But I had the desire to be successful. And if we as educators can instill in our students that you can be, listen, I've traveled, when I went to Africa, I knelt down and I kissed the ground. I said, look at me from what town? The little place in what town where I'm from, we call it Upper Bump. I'm from Upper Bump. We come from Upper Bump, you know, come from Upper Bump and went to Africa. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying, it's make sure that you talk to your kids and let them know that there is life goes beyond where you are today. The no light and the no shoes or wherever. The future can be great if you have a desire and you have that intrinsic motivation. I think I talked too long.
No. But you know what though, and Ms. Hyacinth-Gordon mentioned this, and he's also mentioned with our presenter. That is where that building relationship going, and we're going to wrap things up in a little bit. And but you know, as you're both of you are so passionate about where you came from and not using that or make your life as it is back then, I should say, determine your future. And sometimes I feel that as as a former classroom teacher, building that relationship where I am able to just be, you know, for lack of a better word, raw with my learners to say, okay, you know, here are some of the struggles that I may not be equal to what you have, but here is how you're able to get it. Here's how I know you can be successful. You may not become the baller or the rap star or, you know, but you have a path forward. And you are right, Dr. Gordon, showing them that pathway where they can be successful. You know, I do not want to negate or take away from socioeconomic factors that can provide to obstacles and impede learners' straight pathway for success. But Dr. Gooden and I think Andrea Thomas mentioned grit. You know, grit and from the foundation. And that's why, even though I am the chair for the tertiary sector of the education task force, I always go back to ECE, early child education, because that is where the foundation begins. That is where, so as educators on this platform who are watching, and Dr. Gordon, as we wrap things up, you know, what would he say is your biggest life lesson that you are able to pass on to those educators and those and other stakeholders who are listening in, that you have been able to use as your foundation for success, and that educators can use to impart that foundation for their learners?
Okay, just before I said that, I want to give some credit to our eldest brother who just passed last year. He went to Michael, he was an educator, and my eldest sister, who was also an educator. We have 6 of us as siblings and 4 of us turned out to be educators. So I want to give some credit to them also for setting the pace for us. My response is very simple and dry. A roadblock is not a terminus. If we can instill this in our students, that a roadblock is not a terminus. Obstructions will come. You might fail that class. You might not be able to understand that math concept. You might not be able to find proper clothes to wear to school, or whatever situation might be. You might be in college and you can't afford to buy your lunch. A roadblock is not a terminus. You need that reckless determination for you to be successful and be consistent. Consistency. Be consistent in all that you do. And I can tell you, if teachers can instill this in their students, I still remember Mr. Wilson, my math teacher in high school, he would close the math book and the formulas. If you go to Homewood during my time, went to Homewood, you know, Mr. Wilson, he would close the book and he would just talk to us about life. And those values are instilled in me and what we need to let our students know. And even for us as adults, we still have some dreams to be fulfilled. A roadblock is not a terminus. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Ms. Hyacinth-Gordon, same question for you. What would you say would be one of your biggest life lesson that you're able to pass on to educators who are listening and other stakeholders who are on this platform that has helped you through your walk academically, professionally, and otherwise, so they're able to impart that and use for our students' growth and success. I'm sorry, you're muted, Miss Hyacinth Gordon.
Sorry. Thank you. One of my principals that I worked with, he used to say to the children, how great is your want to? And you know, I always love that, and I always say to my children also, how great is your want to? When you have a great want to, I want to be this, I want to do that, then you are going to make sure that you be it. And you are going to have to develop a hope. A hope must be inside of you that tell you to believe in yourself and say to you, it might look dark right now, but guess what? There's brightness ahead. Also, believe in yourself. Your destiny begins today. And I would like to close with a quote from John Dewey, who says, education is not a preparation for life. Education is life itself.
Wow. Oh, wow. Whew, wow. Wow. Just wow. How great is your want to? How great is your want to? And roadblock is not a terminus. I may need to get a shirt with these little slogans and just walk around because, you know, and even when you just ended with me, your quote, Miss Hyacinth Gordon, like these are impactful. And, you know, as an educator at heart, my mother, Dorothy Murray, a former educator and principal for Albertown Primary, you know, I learned at an early age the importance of education. I learned that that is something that no matter what, it cannot be taken away from you. And if we continue to build that foundation from early childhood onward, we will definitely see as educators how we can impact change and how growth can come about. I want to thank you both once again for this insightful, powerful, thought-provoking conversation. And for those who are listening, educators, do not hesitate to connect with us, because how great is your want to, right? How great is your want to? And that roadblock is not terminus. That obstacle is not the end of it, right? You just have to look beyond that obstacle and to see where the end is, your want to, and you can make it. Thank you both so much for this conversation. And this is just a little icing for what we're about to have later on. So we look forward to it. Again, thank you. Miss Melanie, back to you.
You're most welcome.
Wow, that was wonderful. Wow, excellent. You know, snaps, claps, that was just wonderful, amazing, excellent. And we just had such a full course meal on this afternoon. Oh boy, this afternoon into the evening. I love that, Dr. Sherry, and the thumbs up. I saw someone's posted on the chat that they wanted to hear more about early childhood, but we already had the early childhood session. Dr. Sharon and I did a session on play, and it's saved on the JDETF on the resource. And the focus, as Dr. Sharika has mentioned so much, the cradle to college and career readiness, so we can get that whole lifespan of education. We can see the whole journey. We understand the purpose. And so I'm going to ask or Ms. Leslie and Samuel to give us a snippet of the summit. Everyone won't be able to attend. I think actually it's already filled, the registration, but it's going to be recorded and posted online. And after Ms. Samuels gives a little snippet, I'm going to give you an email that has been created. And we are going to talk, you're going to send us evidence of your reflective practice, evidence of what you got from this session today. evidence of how you're integrating it into your practice, your pedagogical practice. Dr. Sharika likes to talk about the glow and the grow, and we're going to have something special coming. But I turn it over to you, Ms. Samuel.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Baker. Good afternoon again, colleagues. I will be brief. Yes, the Jamaica Diaspora Education Task Force will host its 7th, yes, number 7, Education Summit in March of this year, from March 21st to March 25th. And I tell you, the team that has been working on developing the workshops and all the core information that will be shared in this summit is part of what you heard today. It will simply go wider and deeper. So if you were taken, if you were drawn in like I was, if you could relate to all that you heard today, expect that what will happen in March will be even greater, will be even more beneficial, will be even more useful for each of you as you traverse your educational journey as educators. So as Mrs. Baker mentioned, it's a fairly limited number of folks who will actually attend the summit. The summit is, as I said, is the 7th. We have done it in partnership with the Jamaica Teachers Association for all 7 summits. This year, our hosts are the Union of Jamaican Alumni Associations, of whom I represent, as well as Marymount Manhattan College, which is a small liberal arts college in Manhattan. And so what will happen is that about 75 folks or so from all sectors across Jamaica will have been invited to participate. So what we will be doing is what we call virtual tours, as well as lots of these workshops and discussions across those 5 days. And here's the wonderful thing. Even though you won't necessarily be able to be there in person, we are recording everything. And so, as Mrs. Baker likes to call this, asynchronous. So did I say it right? So what will happen is that you will then be able to, because we're going to post them all out on JDTAN, jdtan.org. And so everyone will be able to asynchronously participate in all that happens in that week in March. So I ask you to look forward to that. But the work starts today with all that you have heard and all the reflective work that you are doing and will continue to do over the next couple of months, because leading up to all then that you will hear from the summit and then beyond. Okay, looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Samuel. So we have come to the end of our first Professional Development Forum, or PDF. The resources are included in the presentations, in the recordings. You'll be able to go back over it. I have created an email, joint ed JDTAN, JOINTED JDTAN @gmail.com. I'm going to put it right here. And we are going to be looking for those, I'm posting it in the chat as well. We are going to be looking for those who can show evidence of their incorporating reflective practice in their pedagogical practice. How did you get a takeaway from here that you have used in your classroom and you can reflect on it? We're going to be looking to showcase lesson plans. And so we want you to email us, and we're going to be putting together some surprises and prizes that we want to be able to give away. So the recording is here. You go on, you respond, you send an email. We're going to be going through and we are going to be celebrating your efforts. We're modeling for you just the very same as we want you to model with your students. We're going to be celebrating this journey together. This is just the beginning. Thank you all so very, very much. And we look forward to a great year that's setting us on a path towards Vision 2030 coming into manifestation. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.